and welcome. This is my second PyCon Edu Summit, and I'm glad to be back. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I think is the world's largest Python course. I'm going to keep saying that until someone says, no, you're not the world's largest Python course. It's the only way to figure out if you're the largest Python course in the world is just to assert that you are, and then people disagree with you. So here's some numbers to support that. I've graduated 140,000 people out of one of my many classes, and 4 million people have touched the class in one way or another. In the last 30 days, I graduated 4,500 new Python programmers somewhere in the world. That's just my Coursera numbers. In the last, I went on edX 3 months ago. We put the course on both Coursera and edX now, and I'm basically graduating a whole bunch of people on edX now as well. So there's a lot of people in this room that have a lot more Python seniority than I do. I am, relative to a lot of people, I'm a late comer to Python. And so I had a life before Python. I have 3 computer science degrees, including a PhD. I've taught virtually every programming language that was cool from 1975 until now. I'm building online educational technology, taught online since '97. I led the open source Sakai learning management system project, and I've been a leader in building a thing called Learning Tools Interoperability, which is how you plug Piazza into Moodle and Piazza into Canvas and Piazza into Blackboard, and so that's where I'm coming from. I sort of met Python in 2008 when I quit my job as the executive director of the Sakai Foundation because of a disagreement with my board of directors, and I went and said, I'll be a faculty member instead. And so I walked into a classroom at a School of Information at the University of Michigan, which is a school of library science, and I was presented with a classroom full of librarians and told to teach them programming. And the first task I had to find was a textbook. And so I didn't like any textbook, even though there were thousands of Python textbooks even in 2008. And so what I did is I had to write my own textbook, and I started with the least worst Python textbook I could find, which thanks to Jeff Elkner. Jeff and Alan wrote the least worst computer science textbook that I could find, and then I threw 75% of it away and wrote and added back to it. And that's because and I'll try to only say this once, I am not a computer science educator. I have no desire to be a computer science educator. I'm not all excited about taking every kid in the world and making them a computer science major. I was a computer science major. It's a rather narrow field. It's not everything that we need. I do, on the other hand, think everyone needs to understand programming and technology, and so that's sort of where I'm coming from. And so I vowed when I started teaching this class to librarians that I was going to teach a technology class and a programming class, and it was going to be fun, it was going to be joyful, it was going to be artistic, it was going to be engaging. And so I am not interested in lambda expressions, I'm not interested in recursion, I'm not interested in n log n, and I just don't think a bunch of 9-year-olds need to hear about n log n. Actually, 30-year-olds don't even need to hear about n log n. What 30-year-olds need to hear is, hey, just use a database, right? And somebody else wrote it all, and you don't have to know that. So I was sort of a Python educator for a while in my own little world, and then the MOOC revolution happened in 2012. And my first reaction was not to teach Python as a MOOC. My first reaction was to teach a course called Internet History, Technology, and Security, which was a course to trick liberal arts majors into learning the TCP/IP stack. Literally, that's what this course is. And that's why it says history. It's like, hey, liberal arts majors, you could like this. This could be fun. It's just a history class. It's going to talk about World War II and Enigma and Bletchley Park and all these wonderful things. And I'll show you videos of Bletchley Park. And oh, wait a second. And then there's this thing called TCP/IP, and it stacks on top. And so what I would do is I call it boiling the frog, right? I would teach them that every liberal arts major who just thought history was cool could eventually understand public-private certificates and encryption and encoding. And at the end, I'm giving quizzes that are all in Rote 13, and I'm making them decode the Rote 13 quizzes in order to answer my quizzes. And I'm like, ha, technology is not so bad. So part of my whole life has been to trick people into liking technology. So as I was building my Python course, I built this in-browser, 100% in-browser, Python development environment based on the Sculpt compiler that compiles Python to JavaScript and then executes it. But I actually was really interested in turning it into a grading system, not a development system, using this thing that I developed called Learning Tools Interoperability, which allows you to build a tool, plug that tool into a learning management system like Canvas or Coursera, and send a grade back. So I was trying to scale this. And inadvertently, I built the entire first, I didn't set out to do this, but the first 10 chapters of my book can be done completely on a phone, right? Because it's all in browser. Can be done on a Chromebook, can be done literally on anything, because it just runs Python in the browser, and it sends the grades back. And my teaching assistant said that this was an important feature, and I did not think it was an important feature. When I started, I thought it was really important to teach people how to install Python on their real computers and do it. But it turns out to be really brilliant that I can teach the first 10 chapters of this book without using a browser. So these are my tattoos, and they're real. They're right here. And I call them my research and my education, otherwise known as my curriculum vitae. So I got PhD from Michigan State University, and I'm a faculty member at the University of Michigan. PhD is in engineering. The faculty position is in library science, yellow. Ellen, Elizabeth. And Sakai and open source and learning tools interoperability was what this side is about. This is my research. Educational technology is my research. Open source, open standards. The last tattoo I got was the Coursera tattoo, where I went out to Coursera and I added learning tools interoperability into Coursera so I could take my entire Python class with its browser-based assessments and plug it into Coursera. I did a few other things that are kind of fun. I think that programming is about people. So I happened to write for IEEE Computer Magazine and had a travel budget for a few years, and I made a bunch of videos. One was Guido. The first video you see of my class is me, and the second video that you see in the class is Guido welcoming you to the class. Now you could actually use my Guido video to welcome to your class, because he doesn't welcome them to my class. He says, welcome to Python. Oops. Another thing that I do, because I'm a frustrated actor, actually. I would much rather be a CNN anchor flying around the world with a television crew than I am a professor. But I do the next best thing, and that is I make my course into a reality show. And so I go all over the world, and I meet my students. I mean, some of you may have gotten an email this morning, because you are my students, about my next office hours in Detroit that's going to feature a race car. Anybody get that email? Yeah, a few people got that email. And so I have a map. You can go see it. It's 70 places all over the world where I just said, hey, I'm going to be at a coffee shop in Amsterdam at 10 o'clock on Sunday. Come by. And then we make pictures, and I make little videos, and I have a map that has all those videos. Part of this is to take an otherwise technical, dry topic and make it be a human topic. People, 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 people. Oh, and by the way, we're going to learn about if statements this week. People, 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 people. Oh, we're going to learn about loops this week. People, people, people. So one of the things that's cool when you have millions of students is you learn something about the world. I have blind students, and as an engineer, I've always wanted blind students. It's just you don't run into them very often. So this is a blind school in India that I was able to visit. There's a blind foundation out of Boston that supports these schools. I now financially support these schools myself as well. And I get to meet blind students, and they tell me what works and what doesn't. Turns out in-browser programming is pretty good for blind students, way better than programming in something else, like a command shell or something. So another one of these pictures is my course got translated into Arabic. Why? Because there's so much money involved in how much money that you can make in Python. And so the University of Michigan just went and paid a whole ton of money to translate my course into Arabic, and now it's on Coursera in Arabic. One of the other things that when you're teaching at scale, all people all over the world, is you have to become the entire university. You're the advisor, you're the registrar, your graduation, your counseling for how to get a job. You do a lot of things. And so in my course, I sprinkle all these things that you think that you get from something other than the classroom in an educational situation, about how to get a job, recommendations. I make little videos about what you should do next. Now that you've finished this class, you should go to a Python meetup. You should do this. You should do that. You should do these other things. So I even have a graduation where I had a graduation speaker, but it's an online thing. And so I said, you get 5 minutes to talk, because this is online. You're not going to get to talk for a long time. And so there's Kurt Bonk from Indiana University, who's a technology education guy. And I've had students that call me, and they tell me that they cry at their graduation because they've never been to a graduation in their life. And I play pomp and circumstance, and I dress up with a funny hat, and we give a little speech. And they said it's the only graduation that they ever have done in their life or ever expect to be able to do. So it took off. I started that class in 2014. We celebrated when I taught had graduated more students across all my classes than would fit in the University of Michigan football stadium, which is 111,000, and I taught 112. So the PR people took me into the stadium and took a bunch of pictures with congratulations to my 112,585 students. That's now 3 years ago. Yeah, well, that's okay. Now, into every life and every story, a little rain must fall. So one of the things that Coursera did for their first 3 years is they had a double bottom line of a pro-social agenda as well as making money. And when their venture capitalists were tired of the pro-social agenda after 3 years, they decided to tell Coursera to make money. So there was a little battle between those of us who'd helped build Coursera and Coursera itself, and you can see some articles. Coursera does, because you can see some articles where I talk about all this stuff, where I never got into Coursera to make money, right? The University of Michigan never got into Coursera to make money. We just thought this was the part of our job as a public university to make the world a better place. And Coursera wanted, because my course is one of the most popular courses that they taught, they wanted to put it behind a paywall. And it took about 1.5 years of shouting before I let them put it behind a paywall. And what I did was, in that 1.5 years of shouting, I created a complete copy of the course that I made, complete open educational resources with Creative Commons videos, open source. And the day I rolled this out is the day I let them put my course behind a paywall. And I told them, my teaching assistants will tell every student who complains about the paywall about the free version. And they said, I don't care as long as you don't have to put it in the course description. You know, it's like, so at least they have to walk in, hit the paywall, get pissed, and then we'll tell them about the free version. It literally is, I built my own MOOC platform. It's all open educational resources. There are learning platforms that just download all my stuff, and there's like a place in India and a place in Korea, a little learning platform with 4,000, 10,000 students. They take my stuff, I'm the teacher, but it's all Creative Commons. That's what OER is supposed to be. And of course, Jeff gave me open education resources, is the foundation of all this stuff. So I've got a textbook, and it's been translated into a bunch of languages, and I have Jeff and Alan to thank for that, because long before it was cool, Jeff, because of the fact that their book was built in the sort of the incubation of the Python open source community, they decided they would make an open source book before Creative Commons even existed. And that's the book that I forked and made, and is now in a bunch of languages. And this is probably the leading Python textbook in the world, not for computer scientists. And that's why it's about information. I've always felt that looking at data about people is a far more motivating thing than solving the 8 queens problem using recursion. So I am at this point like a publisher. I am using this platform that I have of millions of students to try to promote Python even more broadly and push it even farther. So I'm probably the only teacher that you can binge watch on Amazon Prime. I make a total of $21 a month on average from Amazon Prime. So it's not a very lucrative thing, but part of my whole thing about being everywhere and making it so no matter where you turn it, any search box you type Python, I want to come up first. Another thing that I do is on Python for Everybody, I have what I call the University of Dr. Chuck. And these are the students, there's 4,000 of them, but there's more like 10,000 that haven't put themselves on a map. These are the students that have enrolled in the University of Dr. Chuck. They don't enroll in Coursera, they don't enroll in the University of Michigan. I have my own MOOC hosting platform that I built from scratch, which is also open source. It's written in PHP at least for the next year or so. Yeah, I know, I've come to the light, I'm coming to the light. You'll see a happy ending here at the end. And I also probably have about 150 courses around the world. And so if you're familiar with Pearson's MyMathLab, what I want to be is I want to be the MyMathLab for Python. I want to have a book that is a free book, $9.99. And I want to have a website that has got all the content, all the backing material. If you want to do a flipped classroom, it's right there for you, and it plugs into the learning management system, whether it's Moodle or Canvas or Sakai or Blackboard. And I have about 150 classes that have adopted my Dr. Chuck's Python MyMathLab. And the difference between me and Pearson is everything is free and everything's Creative Commons, and there's no cost even to use my servers. I don't even charge like Lumen charges that. This is the thing that I didn't expect. When I started teaching Python, I thought Python was a good language for beginners. But then no grown-ups would ever use Python. And so the whole purpose of Python was to teach you so that I could teach you a real programming language like PHP. So that when you grow up, you use like PHP or something like Java. That's what grown-ups use, right? And that's how I felt in 2008. I was tremendously wrong. I wrote a Quora article called What's the Next Big Thing in Python, and briefly summarized is what I think the next big thing in Python is literally going to eat every programming language and spit it out and destroy it, meaning that we've never seen in the 40-year history of computer science, a language that is more unintentionally aggressive towards other languages in the fact that it's destroying other things. So it turns out that teaching Python is very lucrative. I could have a couple of Teslas if I wanted. I could have a new house. But I decided to take up auto racing instead, so I have a race car. So if those of you saw, I'm going to be showing my race car in Detroit in a little bit. And the race car is run by open source racing with a Coursera logo and a Sakai logo. And so the whole thing is this joke about open source that makes it look like a cool race car. So I want to talk in the last 4 minutes that I've got about where I'm going to take this. I see this world now from almost the perspective of Pearson, right? So the next class, I'm repenting. I'm repenting my 5 years of dalliance with PHP. I have a whole Coursera specialization called Web Applications for Everybody in PHP, and it's very popular, but it ain't going to be it's not as popular as this one's going to be when I'm done with it. And so I'm going to have a specialization on Coursera called Django for Everybody. I just finished teaching a Django course at the University of Michigan, and it's got auto graders, and it's got Creative Commons, open source software, you know, the drill, right? So I expect to have this on Coursera kind of a little less than a year from right now. Coursera tells me that the most searched for term on Coursera is Python. The most searched for term for a course that they don't have is Django. So I think Django's going to be a kind of big deal pretty soon. Although this is one of the things that I'm actually most proud of, and this started in January, and it's the thing that I'd love to, if we had sprint time, to talk about this. I've been contacted by a series of liberal arts schools, about 100 of them, that want to add technology to their curriculum in a way that doesn't harm the liberal arts schools and destroy them. There's often computer science and liberal arts meet, and then one of them dies. Usually it's liberal arts. And so I'm trying to build a way that you can take a fashion student or a writing student and make them like technology and teach Python. So I have a whole different curriculum. I have a whole different, and the idea of it is not just to make it a technology class, but to make it a technology plus a critical thinking about technology. So you spend time reading books about technology and arguing and debating about technology and wondering about technology and wondering about artificial intelligence. And oh, by the way, this week we're also going to teach you if statements, along with all this cool reading that you're doing. And the whole goal of this, I'll be successful if it means that liberal arts schools do not have to add any faculty. Literally, I can take somebody from the writing department and have them teach the Python course and bring the writing into the Python course. Take somebody from the physics department, have them teach the Python course, which means I got to teach them how to do Python and then give them enough materials so that it's really easy. And this is my secret plan. And I hear a lot this morning talking about this, and that is, I really am not excited about the way I'm really not excited about the way 99% of the high schools teach computing and computer science. I think it's terrible, to be honest. So I'm building slowly but surely, because high schools are a tough nut to crack. We've heard that a bunch of times this morning. I figure the only way that I can help high schools is if I can build a whole curriculum with a whole set of books and a whole set of supporting materials, and then high schools will find their way to it, as compared to me going and banging on high school doors saying, I got this great idea. And that's where liberal arts colleges are easier to get into than high schools are to get into. But I basically have this entire curriculum that is intended to be a scratch to AP Computer Science curriculum, and happy to talk with people about that. And so here's the moment of inception. So my whole career has been in building open source educational technology, and that is how I teach. But the thing that really is going to be the greatest joy in my life, and this would be another thing we could do a sprint on, is this is a Django application that can plug into Canvas, that can send grades back to Canvas in 20 lines of code. The inception moment is I am creating the world's largest Python class to have students go into the world's largest Django class to then create hundreds of thousands of people who can build new educational technology applications so that we can teach just anything that we want. Thank you for your time.